Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead. Back where that gentleman's sitting back there, up against the curtain, right there, that had been here 8 years before. 8 years before. Two guys that had been 8 years before. One, but not the same seminar. I told you about the one who said that Roberto was a mongoloid idiot and he'd never make any money, and he's made hundreds of millions, and he gave his senior staff 10 million cash. Okay, but there was another guy in the seminar, and with two other guys, the graduation night, they came into my office, and the threes of them, as they say up here, presented me with this 50 cal bullet. And I've had a lot of 50 cal bullets over the years. This happens to be a can opener, or beer opener. And they said that we want to make this a solemn pledge. And they stood there. One guy was Lebanese from Canada. One guy was from Switzerland, but from Alaska originally. And one guy was, I forget where the other guy was from. And they said, we know a 50 cal, because I used to have a 50 caliber here, gun. But I talked about it in the seminar, and so they confiscated it. But anyway, you can put this one bullet through 3 heads, easy. No problem. Even a big head like Robbie's. And they said, if we don't succeed, blah, 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 because they also said that everybody in their class was brain dead. Now, some of you have already figured out. It always amazes me, like you were congregating around Robbie over there and asking him. And the difference between the 90s, we didn't allow you to intermix is like, it sounds like having sex. We didn't allow you to talk to one another. We didn't allow you to have cell phones. We took all our home phones off the hook, or not, disconnected them. Okay? There was no, now there may have been some swapping of bodily or fluids that I'm sure there was, but I didn't know about it. I didn't want to know about it. And it wasn't a networking event. This is not a networking event. Some of you have already gotten the details of other people in this room. Getting back to the bullet. And but this guy came. And he had made about 8 or 10 million since in the 8 years. He had made a few bucks. He was in Switzerland. He was rolling up tax advisors, which in Switzerland, they got 42 zillion of them. The Lebanese guy went to Iran and got arrested and put in jail. And the third guy just faded from the earth. So I reminded him. I asked, please stand up. Of course, me? It can't be me. Of course, I went back, pulled out his file. It was him. And the guy that had gone to Iran, who got put in jail, fortunately for him, was 6'7", 285, and he had about 2% body fat. He was a power lifter, a huge, muscular guy. And he said he got used to the screaming of the little fucks like you getting fucked in the ass every night in an Iranian prison. Pretty soon you get used to it, Mr. Peña. I said, I'm not sure I could get used to it myself, but you do. And then after 6 months, because the Ayatollah, remember the Ayatollah that used to wear the suit? He didn't wear all the bullshit, and he was famous for body odor because he never took a bath. Okay, that Ayatollah, and he only lasted 1 term, decided the QLA was communistic. We sent people to Haiti. We lost a director. We don't know what happened to him. We sent 2 young black kids, one of which was Haitian, one of which was his father was the mayor of Haiti when I was going to invade it and kill everybody back in the good old days. So some people actually do what they say they're going to do. We used to get pledges and you sign a contract. That's all horseshit. Doesn't mean anything. The only guy that fulfilled his pledge was Marcus Bauer. When we stopped doing it 3 years ago. So for 27 years, one guy did what he said he was going to do. One. No gals. No gals. Now, we've had a lot of people say, trillion, I want to be trillionaire. You know the bullshit. Okay. You don't even know how many zeros trillion has. But I keep this up there to remind myself that I have to get beyond the stupid questions and the stupidity basically of you, and the braggadociousness. But by the last day, you're going to want to be sticking your tongues down each other's throat. For what reason? I have no fucking idea. Zero. Because maybe you'll get some DNA molecules from the other guy's tongue, or I don't know. But nobody in this room, except for Ravi, has anything to share that's worth a shit. And not all his stuff is worth a shit. But he's pieced it together because he didn't give up. He didn't give up. And in the affidavit statement that we used to put, and it was graduation night, we used to, I think we stopped doing it just before you came in 2017, in Marcus Bauer. Now, what does that tell you? And these weren't outrageous things that you're going to save the world and shit like that. We've had some of those, but in 27 years, we've had one. And he did it easily. Marcus wanted to up the game. He said, he wanted to put money up. And we've had a couple guys put money up. Nobody ever paid. Because it sounds easy, guys. But as they say here in Scotland, isn't it? Because they're illiterate up here. It isn't it. It's a motherfucker. In a couple of days, you're going to hear Simon the Bell, 2 tons of fun, 450 pounds of money and fat. And he's going to say, I said it last night, I believe, I alluded to it. Even though Dan tells you and I tell you, he's going to say, it's hard. I'm trying to imitate how he sounds. It's hard. But it's harder than you think it's going to be. And then we got Amber, the flat-chested bitch from Holland, 23 years old, in 60 days, who told everybody in the class, I would be ashamed of your manhood or something like that, which all the guys wanted to fucking cut her head off. But she was right. Now, this is the first time you're really going to be put on the spot if you follow the steps. I say if because some of you won't. And hold yourself accountable. The weekly report now doesn't come to me anymore. In his day, it came to me. And I used to have some cryptic remarks back. You lazy cunt, or, like that. And I used to write in Hunter Pike type. I mean, the font was big because I can see through the bullshit. And then about, 7 or 8 years ago, we had a guy from Poland. I used to call him Lurch. If you remember the Addams Family, the program on TV, and they had a hand. It was just, but he looked, if that hand had the rest of a body, it would be Lurch. About 6'5", he looked like kind of Frankensteinish. And he said, what you really should have on the report, Mr. Peña, is what am I not telling Dan? And like a light bulb went off in my head. Fuck, that's pretty smart for Lurch, And then I got the truth. Because as good as the questionnaire is, with 70-plus questions, what am I not telling Dan? It's like, for those of you that have raised kids, unless you ask your kids the exact correct question and you frame it exactly correct, you don't get the right answer. And as you have kids, we had 3, by the time the third one comes around, which was a daughter, who was not as big a pain in the ass as the 2 boys, you know how to ask the questions. So she would say, Daddy, I don't have any fun because you know what to ask. Now remember, I told you, I've said it many, many times, we've only had one question asked of me in 29 years, now 30 years, that was germane. Now I say this the last 7 or 8 or 9 years. We've got data. I didn't even know what data was 30 years ago. We've got data that can show you without a shadow of a doubt that the people that ask the most questions fail. Which is kind of counterintuitive. Maybe it is counterintuitive. I'm going to say it again slow. The people that ask the most questions, because ergo, most of the questions are shit, fail. Second thing we have data on. The people that take the most notes succeed. The most knows, even if they're frivolous, succeed. Because the last day I'm going to tell you the 4 or 5 most successful people, what they did, and I'll tell you right now. For example, Peter Haraszti, the Hungarian Forrest Gump, as he calls himself, and you're going to hear him on the screen say, I'm a Hungarian Forrest Gump. He says, I went back and I took all the shit. First of all, I sat down with my wife and told her, it's this way or the highway. And he says that his English is much better now than it was 6 or 7 years ago, or divorce. And I copied all the notes that I had, and I put them in some sort of order. And I copied the templates, put them in Hungarian, etc. And he spent about 5 days doing that. And then he started on his quest. I'm going to tell you that most of those guys have a standing desk. I've been saying this for 20 years. I'm exaggerating. This is a Trumpism. Nobody uses a standing desk. If Ravi did a standing desk, he'd be 50 pounds lighter. And everybody understand what a standing desk? Okay. I'm going to tell you that I thought it was cute, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, kids, Ravi and his wife. But you're planning stuff that you're not ready to do yet. Make some fucking money first. Sally and I have been every place that's worth seeing at least twice, sometimes 4 or 5 times. We've been to Africa 5 times. So don't be planning any shit like that. Marcus still hasn't gone any place. And you should make as much money as he has. I only shamed him into getting a driver in a limo about 3 years ago. So don't get ahead of yourself. Doesn't mean to reduce your goals. It doesn't mean to reduce, your passion. But most of you in this room, a stiff drink and a good fuck could kill you. There's no fucking passion in this room. I can see it in your eyes. I see fear. Now, my hope, and hope is not a strategy, my hope, if Allah, is good to me, that many of you will not have that fear in your eye come the end of the week. Because you'll be able to piece together connect enough dots. See, just because Ravi did it and just because these 10 to 15 people that you're going to hear the next week did it, doesn't mean you can fucking do it. And you know that down deep inside. And it makes your little 2-centimeter dick shrivel. You know it. Some of you in this room have been looking at me on YouTube, etc., 5, 6, 7 years. And then I look at your statements about what the fuck they've been doing 5 years. It's got a net worth of $300,000 or euros or whatever the fuck it is. Some of you have 0. Is he blind? Maybe I should have sent it out in Braille. So let's not. I'm just the opposite. Instead of what we get up and do jumping jack shit, that's all horse shit. There's data to prove that is that doesn't work. And those are the kinds of gurus, I use the term loosely, that you expose yourself to. And almost all of those guys are poor. Not all of them. Almost all of them are poor. Now, those same guys that when I started 30 years ago, many of them are still around. They were poor then and they're poor now. I sent private investigators around to see where they lived. Before I started, this was during 1992, before I gave my first seminar in 1993, I went around and who are their accountants? Are their families have money? One of the big gurus who is still around, he lived with his mother in a 3-story something or other in New Orleans. He used to put his milk out on the, open the window, and you put your milk out on the window to keep it cool. And then he was getting $5,000 a seminar from meatheads just like you. And the reason why so many people gravitate to him and to people like him is because they tell you it's easy if you do this. And then they upsell you. It's even easier if you do this. Then they upsell you again, upsell you. Everybody understands what an upsell is, right? And then you're in the platinum, whatever, in the gold. And yet you're still here. And there's only one guy here, aside from Ravi, who's got any money, not real money, but kind of money. Kind of. So don't spend your time, and I normally, when the 17-year-old kid who didn't show up, I'd say normally I'd eat with him a number of nights. I wouldn't allow him to spend time with you, and I don't eat lunch. So I also would have liked to have him at lunch because poorness rubs off. And that's why you got to cut your association with all your family. Last night you saw Trump, the Baron. Was anybody raised like Trump's kid? I don't think so. Takeaways from Trump. Not Junior, he's fourth in line to the dynasty. What, if anything, did you take away? Yes, sir.
He's independent, opinionated, and knows what he wants at 10 years old.
And not like you. So it is possible. There's a slide coming up that you weren't programmed for success because the people that programmed you, if they understood what program meant, weren't successful. Kids don't do what the parents tell them to do. They do what they see the adults do. Now, there's nothing dishonorable about being a bricklayer or a carpenter or a cop or a teacher, but a lot of kids follow in their parents' footsteps. We have some people in the room that their parents were doctors and they're bums. How did that happen? Not bums, but I mean, they missed the boat somehow. When I got out of the military, the first thing I did is I interviewed for the FBI. Because I thought, even though I got out of the military to make money, I wanted to make my dad happy. Some of you can relate to that. I had 2 interviews, and I was a shoo-in. The first interview was at a bar that used to be across the street from Parker Center, downtown Los Angeles, called the Box Office. It was owned by policemen. That's the first interview in a bar. The second interview was at the FBI headquarters on Wilshire Boulevard. And then I decided, I asked one question. Because my dad said, people that ask questions are stupid. This is 50 plus years ago. And now, do you know why Google and those kind of companies have 8, 10, 12, 15 interviews? Do you understand why? No. Because the people interviewing you have no experience, no life experience. And they want to be able to blame it on a consensus vote as opposed to one person. That's the only reason. They're covering their ass. Or as they say up here, covering their arse. And yet they still make mistakes. So and we're still going to get a gazillion questions, and all of them will be worthless. When I read through your questions, you had questions before you got here. And 2 or 3 of you I already told, those are all answered. I answered a couple of them. But we've had psychiatrists. We've had guys that, at Harvard Medical School that look at these stuff. Back in the day, the first 7 years that I gave this seminar, I didn't collect any data. That was stupid of me. I thought data was a passing thing that didn't mean shit. I still don't give much credit to data. Because most of you that have worked 10, 20 years have 1 year 10, 20 times. You haven't learned shit in 20 years. But so from the 8th year on, we've had a lot of data. And all the data gets worse in the sense that they're per capita, am I saying this right? Per head, they're less successful. We have guys that are doing numbers and gals, but we have a lot more guys and gals going through the funnel to produce less numbers than we did in the 90s. What else about Mr. Trump?
Even in the inauguration, you can see that Donald and Melania have, it's like a process. They've put him in front of the world stage to show, it's like almost conditioning him to like normalize what high performance is. And him standing right next to Donald when he's getting inaugurated was obviously indicated that it's intentional, it's not by accident.
Now, you may not like the Trump kids. I don't know why you dislike Barron, other than he's had a great life. But I mean, but all of Trump's kids are high-performance kids. Some of them are a little jerky, but I mean, they're all high-performance kids. I don't know how you could be raised by Mr. Trump and not be a high-performance person. Say what you will about him. Say that his alligator mouth overloads his hummingbird ass, what befalls me myself, but he's a high-performance son of a bitch. And the first thing that you have to do, in my opinion, and I don't say humble opinion because there's nothing humble about me, is ascertain what you consider high performance. Again, hope is not a strategy, but hopefully it's someone like me. But it's difficult when you go out there and you're searching for your dream team to find people like me. It's not easy. It's not impossible, though. Because you will be no better or no worse than your dream team. Remember, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Growing up, it was a mom, maybe a part-time dad. I said it yesterday, a brother, sister, yada, yada. Well, that didn't get you too far so far. But it's the right system because now most people that come to the seminar, other than on my tapes, have never heard that before. What if I was to judge it? We used to do this in the 90s. We don't do it anymore. Who are the guys that you spent the last 5 years with? Five guys. It was like shock therapy to me when I used to read it.